One Question is designed to give subscribers valuable insights on how executive leaders in college athletics think about key issues on their respective campuses, in their departments, or within their leagues and conferences.
Greetings, this is Ty Brown and welcome to One Question, where we highlight executive leaders in college athletics. Our guest today is Armani Dawkins. Armani is the Senior Associate Athletics Director and Chief of Staff at University of Oklahoma. Greetings, Armani. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Armani, in 11 years in college athletics, your experience is varied, right? It looks like most recently you were in student athlete development. You have spent some time in event planning for fundraising. You've worked in human resources. Special assistant to Kevin White at Duke. You worked with Nate Pine when he was there at Holy Cross. And I think in general, you've worked with a number of elephants in the profession, and you have had your hands in a number of different areas of the profession. So it makes you pretty well rounded with only 11 years in the industry.
Yeah, I've been blessed. Some would say lucky, but I think, for me, luck is being ready, right, when the opportunity presents itself. But I think diversity of experience, both with leadership, obviously working, as you said, under some of the elephants and the giants in our business, to working with a first-time AD in Nate Pine at Holy Cross. I think that's been extremely unique about my journey in college athletics.
Looking at your experience, you left Duke as special assistant to Kevin White, who's an elephant in the profession, like you mentioned, and then you go work for Nate Pine, first-time sitting athletics director. Tell me about the transition in experiences there when you look at leadership and how you help the leader to be successful at what they're doing.
Right. So I think, having not sat in the chair before, I can't say what it's like, but I do know, regardless of the AD, you have to come in and listen. What is their vision? What are we trying to accomplish here? And how can I be of most service, right? So I think with a Kevin, somebody that's been in the game for so long, he knows what he likes, he knows what he doesn't like, he knows what works for him. Transitioning to Holy Cross with Nate, trying to figure it out as we're going and really stepping into that role of how can I be of most assistance to him. When I was there overseeing student athlete development, Nate had challenged me to come in, blow it up, revamp it, re-energize it, start from scratch, but this is my vision for student athlete development. So I was very, happy with the fact that he really let me run with it and create. But again, it all started with just, Nate, what is your vision? What are we trying to accomplish here? I'm bought in, and now I'm going to go execute on that.
Right. And I imagine to him that helped, especially where you were coming from in terms of your experiences. Just bringing in ideas from other places you've been probably helped him feel comfortable in giving you that authority.
Absolutely, and I think it was a moment for me of power of the network. You don't know what you don't know. I reached out to colleagues across, my background had been in Power 5, and just what are some things you all are doing, and then how do we adjust it to make it unique and specialized for the Holy Cross student athlete experience. And so I know sometimes it's easy to say, well, we don't have the resources of a Power 5. True, but we're still trying to accomplish the same thing, which is making sure our student athletes have the best experience possible. So I couldn't have had a better foundation going from Duke, the NCAA, Duke, to Holy Cross in terms of being able to lean on colleagues across the industry who were truly experts in that student-athlete development world. At the time, Risa Lovelace up at Oregon, Corey Pinkett was at K-State at the time, now at Baylor, Reese now at Maryland, reached out to ladies like them and what are some things you all are doing, programming, and then, like I said, just put a twist on it and made it, unique and special for the Holy Cross student-athlete.
Right. So then you go working for Pine, first-time athletics director, and you come back and you get hired, at Oklahoma for another veteran athletics director, and Joe Castiglione. Now, my assumption is that he brought you in with the position of senior associate AD and chief of staff to enhance the culture at Oklahoma athletics. Of course, for many of us from the outside looking in, it seems like Joe seems to have created and is always maintaining a culture for success there. But I wonder, from your point of view, why was it important to bring that type of position on?
As Joe and I went through the process of bringing me on and his vision for the role. I go back to, what I've said a little bit before. I've been extremely blessed to serve under the leadership of a Kevin White at Duke, now of a Joe C. And I think the one thing that stands out the most for me with leaders such as them is just that relentless pursuit of excellence, that never letting your foot off the gas type of mentality. And I think when this role was kind of floating around in Joe's head, it was at the time would have been his 20th year in college athletics, going into his 21st. There had been a leadership change with our president, the president that had been with Joe for his entire career. And so I think he had this moment of, how do we maintain the success, but also how do we continue to set the standard of success? And, those giants, the elephants in the business, they're always thinking about innovation, future, not just being complacent. And I think from a culture standpoint, just Joe understanding you can't maintain success or a culture of success if you don't surround yourself with people that have diverse experiences, that are asking leadership the question, how do we get better? How do we become the best? And when Joe and I talked about my position, that's what we talked about, was honesty. I told him, I don't want to take this role if I'm not going to be allowed to be honest with you, if I'm not going to be able to light up some blind spots for you. Obviously, 21, now 22 years here, you've got some blind spots that have just naturally formed. And so in creating my role, there's no doubt for me, Joe being the innovator that he is, he took the time to think about the changing landscape of college athletics and what do we need, what do I need to continue leading one of the most successful athletic departments in the country. So it's self-awareness, right? The great leaders have it, the emotional intelligence, and then knowing that I had been other places, coupled with my student-athlete experience. I was just going to bring a perspective that wasn't had before.
With Joe, tell me about the part of being honest with him about his blind spots. How does he receive that from you? That's a situation for a lot of people to be in. It's hard for them to hear that they have blind spots, let alone what they are, right?
Yeah. I laugh because I often take a moment to just think about what it is I'm having to do, and sometimes I am having to go to Joe with not great news or a blind spot we need to shed some light on that's just been there for a while. But I think it goes back to honesty in Joe's willingness to be vulnerable and understand that even with all the success he's had, even all the success that we've had at Oklahoma, there's always a chance to get better. He knows that I always have his best interest at heart. I've always got his back. I've always got our student athletes, our coaches, our staff, Oklahoma, our brand. I always have the best interests of all of those stakeholders at heart. And so I'm never going to bring something to him that isn't worthy of his time or a second look. But I think he and I's relationship is rooted in a lot of vulnerability and just honesty and trust.
Right. I wonder about the role that you do. If you were to give a couple bullet points on how you would describe some of the technical things you do in your role to help enhance the culture.
First and foremost, the role is about, advancing and advocating directives on behalf of Joe. That is simple, short soundbite of what that is. I'm also tasked with optimizing our investment in communication operations and our staff resources. So the best way that I've heard it described is Nina King, who serves in the role at Duke, saying it's air traffic control for Joe, in her case for Kevin. And all these different plates are spinning, and I'm navigating what needs his time, what needs his attention, what could be a potential threat to the department or to him. Specifically, I oversee risk management, a lot of our operational and analytics planning, forecasting. I'm often sitting with Joe and he's run across an idea or he's talked to a colleague and it's, hey, we should look into this. Are we doing this? Obviously the big one, driving revenue. So it's almost for Joe, having somebody that I've had all these ideas or I've seen things that I want to do, and we just haven't had that kind of catch-all role, to execute on some of that. It's a lot of delegation. delegating. It's a lot of getting the job done through others. So important to build the trust with staff here and know that if it's coming from me, if I'm asking you to do it, know that it's coming, from the highest level, know that this is something that's a priority for Joe. And then just making sure, I'm staying focused on bridging the strategic goals that have been provided by Joe with the tactical requirements of the, different functional areas in our department.
Okay, so you come into this type of position, which sounds like there's a whole bunch of information. Tell me about what you've had to put in place for yourself to be able to handle this type of broad spectrum.
For me, the biggest thing is break it down, and I actually have a little sticky on my desk that says break it down. Right, most of the times when a staff member, sometimes a student athlete, a coach comes to you, it's this hair on fire, giant problem, the house is burning down, and how do I take a moment to pause and go through the steps and think about how do we find a solution, or how am I able to offer advice. So that's been a big one for me, just reminding myself to break it down. Also constantly checking in with Joe of just our priorities, and some of that is me saying, Joe, this needs to move to the top of the list, and sometimes it's him saying, no, this is more important, and just always checking in with, our core values, our mission, what are we trying to accomplish here, and whatever the issue is, whatever the topic is, how does that fit into all that. I think I learned in my first year I can't be all things to everyone if I first don't have a grasp on what I'm supposed to be doing, and I think that was really important. My role, I wasn't filling a role that someone already occupied. I was trying to define the role while I was in it and teach people about the role, while I'm in it. And so I think for me it was just clear communication, being very intentional about reaching out to people, and this is what the role is, how can I help? Even if there's nothing you have for me right now, I'm another resource at the senior, administration level.
I wonder about this. I'll ask this last question here. We'll wrap up. But I wonder, in your time there, in terms of evaluating the job you've done, what type of programs or processes have you implemented that have made a difference in helping Joe enhance the culture there in Oklahoma athletics?
So I can't take the credit for starting this group, and this is really Joe's brainchild, but we do have Athletics Department Staff Council, which we shorten it to ADSC, and that group is dedicated athletic staff members, and they're tasked with enhancing and communication across the department, recognizing staff and their accomplishments, and celebrating our staff, and just continuously thinking of ways to identify improvements across the department. It was pre-existing, like I said, but I've come in and revamped it and re-energized it to be more inclusive of our staff and put into action the suggestions they've had to enhance our culture. I think that was one of the biggest things for me when I came in was we did a survey, we gave this feedback, and then nothing happened. And then within Staff Council, we have our 4 subcommittees: diversity and inclusion, staff engagement, recognition, professional development, and events. And all of those are programming, different workshops. For example, we had the Sunday night kickoff against Houston a couple of weeks ago. Long week for staff, no Labor Day holiday weekend. So we did a staff appreciation week where it was delivering breakfast. It was, hey, there's a snack cart coming around. We did a raffle, just things to keep staff lifted on such a crazy week when we knew outside of here people were making Labor Day plans and most people had, the Friday game or the Saturday game. Once a month, I remind our senior staff to pause and think of ways that they can celebrate staff, preferably staff that is not within their direct area of oversight. If your direct supervisor praises you, that's one thing, but for somebody that doesn't even work in your area at the senior level to say, hey, you really knocked that out of the park, or hey, you guys did a really great job on that, coming in and realizing how much that means for staff. So just as busy as we get as senior administrators, they get that monthly reminder from me of just, hey, did you pause this month and think of a way to celebrate staff? And then the one that I'm probably most excited about is I went to Joe and again, lighting up a blind spot of how we do compensation adjustments or raises here. And is it a transparent process that supervisors feel like they're empowered to have a voice, to have a say beyond just, the traditional staff evaluation? So with Joe's blessing, created a salary review committee and spent some time just looking at history of compensation adjustments, researching how we had traditionally gone about that, and most importantly, giving supervisors a chance to say, I've got some real rock stars on my team that, unfortunately just they haven't received compensation adjustments. Can we shine a little bit of light on what they're doing? And so feel really good about that review committee, really good about the process, and I'm confident some good things are going to come from it. It's all about listening to the staff and needs, understanding that I can't, no magic wand can't make it all happen, but I'm listening, and we are trying to continue pushing the culture forward and, like I said, not only maintaining the level of success that we've had, but setting the standard as well.
Well, Armani, the things you mentioned sound like they are definitely something that will help enhance the culture for success there at University of Oklahoma. I really appreciate you joining us here on One Question.
No problem. Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.
That was Armani Dawkins. She's the Senior Associate Athletics Director and Chief of Staff at University of Oklahoma. And of course, this is Ty Brown with One Question. And keep in mind, the role of a leader is to create and maintain an environment that people want to be a part of. And as always, be better tomorrow than you are today. This episode of One Question is produced by Spades Media Group, solving problems using creative leadership.